In a world where hustle culture collides with wellness warnings and workplace demands keep evolving, how do we stay sharp without burning out? How do we navigate the endless stream of wellness trends while actually getting results? This is the Work and Wellness Podcast, and I'm your host, Ange Davis. Drawing from my own journey of wins, stumbles, and honest revelations, I'll be bringing you raw, unfiltered conversations with experts and inspiring guests who've been there, lived it, and found a better way. Together, we'll cut through the noise and workshop what it really means to be well in today's workplace. No more choosing between success and sanity. No more sacrificing health for achievement. Whether you're struggling with burnout, searching for purpose, or simply ready to work smarter, not harder, you're in the right place. This is real talk about real solutions for real people. Let's get into it.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the show. This week, I'm talking about how to make a big career or business decision. And what spurred on this episode is that I decided and announced this week that I was closing my Pilates studio. So some of you may or may not know that I own a Pilates studio. It's called Grit Pilates, a little theme with the grit there. And I've had this Pilates studio for 4 years. I've taught Pilates for over a decade, but I've had the studio for 4 years, and I've gotten to the point where I had to make a decision about what business I was really going to focus on and grow. And so there is a lot that comes with making this decision. You know, it's emotional, it's also strategic, it's identity shifting. There's a lot of community focus on it as well. And today I wanted to talk through exactly the process and the considerations that I went through in making the decision to close the studio, because I think the process is really relevant to anyone who has to make a big business or career decision, and some of the frameworks and thinking that I use to enable me to make a decision. Particularly a decision that is difficult and one that on the surface might not even make sense to people. So I thought it'd be really helpful because it's relevant whether you are considering leaving a role or changing roles, scaling something up, winding something down, starting something new, wanting to go for a promotion, wanting to change companies, or simply questioning if what you're doing right now is still right for you. It's important to have a process because decisions are hard. And when you make a decision, you want to feel like you've considered enough to feel good with the decision. So I want to talk about the first framework that I use, and that is fact versus feeling. What is a fact? What is a feeling? Because when we are mulling things over in our own head, we can often sort of muddle the two between what's a fact and what's a feeling. So I physically get a piece of paper and I split it into 2 columns. What is a fact? What is a feeling? And so from the Pilates studio perspective, some of the things that were facts were that the studio required at a minimum 20 hours per week of operational energy. That includes me teaching classes, talking to clients, running challenges, responding to membership inquiries, marketing, Instagram, all of that sort of thing. Another fact is that the studio generates consistent and regular income. It does cap scalability because the studio is limited to how many classes can be taught in terms of financial scalability. It requires my physical presence. Another fact is that my revenue from my workshops and my leadership programs can replace my Pilates revenue with fewer delivery days. And another fact is that I want to travel more. Many of you know that Liam and I love to travel. We love adventure. And that's a fact. And the Pilates studio doesn't enable that. Some of the feelings that I wrote down were I love the community. I feel responsible for the clients that come through my door. I adore them all, and I feel responsible for wanting to help them move. I am scared of losing consistent, regular, recurring income that comes with a business like a Pilates studio. I'm really proud of what I've built, and the business is a really good, solid business. So business is actually thriving. And so that was a real funny feeling for me about deciding, oh God, the business is thriving. Does this make sense? I was a little bit worried about what people would think about the decision. And I do feel relief when I think about having my mornings back, choosing to spend my mornings how I want to spend them. I get up every day of the week, and the first thing I do is teach Pilates. I obviously have time to myself, but my first energy output is usually at 5:45 or 6 a.m. every single day teaching Pilates. So the reason I do this framework is because when we don't separate fact and feeling, like I said, they can get tangled. And facts are strategic by nature, and feelings are also valid, but they play different roles in decision making. And you need to be aware of both, but very well aware of what you put more weight on between your fact and your feelings. And so I find that framework of literally just drawing the line down the page, writing what's fact or feeling, and just whatever comes to your mind, writing it out can be a really great first step in making a difficult decision. Then I talk about rich life a lot. You all know that. This is a framework from a guy called Ramit Sethi, who I think is wonderful. And he talks a lot about knowing what your rich life is. I've talked about it on the podcast many times. And so I write down for me, what did my rich life include? I'm pretty clear on my rich life because I'm always looking at it and referring back to it when I make decisions. So for me, my rich life includes things like living by the ocean, being able to travel with Liam and have adventures, really being able to invest in my health and well-being and energy, having a flexible schedule, making meaningful impact on people's health and well-being with the work that I do, intellectual stimulation, and community is really important to me. And then I looked at my businesses and I figured out which business model really supports that rich life. What business model is more in line with my rich life? So the Pilates studio supported community and consistent income, but it restricts flexibility, my travel, my energy to be able to scale. And if I kept going with Pilates, I could see that it was going to start affecting my health, particularly my energy. I've been there once before. I've completely burnt out with panic attacks, and it is absolutely not something that I will allow myself to do again. Mind Your Grit, on the other side, supports my opportunity to scale because it's not a time for money business. So there's real opportunity to scale in multiple ways with that business. It can be delivered virtually or in person. It actually supports my ability to travel because I do get to travel for that work, which I love. But it also means I can block out my delivery days when I know I have blocks of travel coming up. It expands my intellectual impact because I'm able to be around different people and talk about different concepts and ideas. And it also expands my ability to impact with the work that I do in teaching people how to look after their mental health and well-being. And it aligns with my mission. And so when you look at which model supported my rich life, it started to become very clear that Mind Your Grit is more aligned with me living my rich life. And then after I do that, so fact or feeling, what aligns more to my rich life, then I look at my mission and impact. So what's my ultimate purpose in life? And it's always been to transform the construct of work to make sure that when we spend so much of our time working, we do so with really strong well-being. so that we go to work and work doesn't get our sparkliest version of ourselves and home gets our most dull version. So that people feel like they can perform really strongly and they have the skills to lead and perform well because they know how to look after their well-being. And that's really my clear focus in life. I want work to be enjoyable, fun, where you can perform really highly but still be well at the end of it. And when I look at my work, I had to think, where do I have the greatest leverage to be able to deliver on that? And where do I have the most exponential capacity to grow that? And the reality is, whilst I can do that in a smaller way with the studio, Mind Your Grit has much larger potential to be able to do that. So some of the questions that I ask myself is, where do I create the most meaningful impact? Where does my skill set have the highest multiplier effect to achieve that purpose and mission? And if I removed fear completely, where is my work most needed? And so big decisions often require us to move from something good to something greater, or to say no to one thing to be able to say yes to another thing. So having a look at my mission and tying things back to my mission and where I can have the most impact, that was a really helpful reframe. Then I did a bit of an energy audit. So I just spent some time really thinking about energy output, not hours. I talked about this in the podcast last week. It's about where my energy was being spent. And I thought about what tasks make me feel drained afterwards, what things make me feel energized, what feels heavy, what feels expansive. And in all reality, slowly but surely, teaching Pilates is becoming draining because I'm up super early. It's energy output very early in the morning. And it doesn't allow me to start my day in a way where I can really consolidate my energy. And because of the fixed timetable, I'm not able to adjust my schedule or my outputs based on my energy. And so consulting days, workshops, leadership programs, even though they're huge energy output days, they always really light me up when I come home, and I can manage when I'm putting input into things and booking things so that I have enough space to make sure that I'm recharging my energy as well. Then I asked myself the 10-10-10 rule. It's a really classic decision framework. It's nothing new. I didn't invent it. But I asked myself, how will I feel about this decision in 10 minutes? How will I feel about this decision in 10 months? And how will I feel about this decision in 10 years? So 10 minutes is kind of the emotional side of things. Do you feel loss, grief, relief, sadness, excitement? 10 months, I think what will it look like later this year? How will, I feel at the end of the year? And I think likely I will feel proud that I made the call. And in 10 years, almost certainly I'll have moved towards being in really strong alignment with my bigger vision. So zooming out really helps to prevent short-term discomfort from dictating our long-term decisions. And then I think about opportunity cost. So every yes is a no to something else. I've said this many times in the podcast before that really everything is a trade-off in life. Going to the gym is trading off the comfort of sleeping in, and vice versa. Sleeping in is trading off the ability to be healthy, fit, build your longevity. By keeping the studio, I was saying no to scaling Mind Your Grit. I was saying no to being able to travel whenever I want to, no to larger opportunities, bigger, longer term projects, and no to being able to work within my own energy cycles as much as I wanted to. Now, I absolutely still did that within the confines and construct of my day, but it was still many times when I was feeling low on energy. But because people are booked into a class, I have an obligation to go and teach that class, and I love teaching. So we often assess the risk of changing, but rarely do we assess the risk of staying. And so asking ourselves, what does staying actually cost me in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? Because that question really changes the way we frame it, right? So not what am I losing, but what could it be costing me if I don't make this decision? The next part, and this is a really, really important part to me, is consulting the people that I trust, but not crowdsourcing my decision. Because I think sometimes we can borderline ask too many people and it actually doesn't serve any purpose. So, big decisions I don't believe should be made in isolation because we often have blind spots. All of us, in fact, have blind spots. And so sometimes other people can help us see and recognize those blind spots. But I don't believe that big decisions should be made by committee either. And I think there is a difference between consulting your inner circle and then just throwing it out to every Tom, Dick, and Harry to get their perspective. And so when I was sitting on this decision to close the business, I didn't do a poll on Instagram or ask 25 people what they would do. And I really didn't seek validation from anyone. It wasn't about people validating my decision, but I chose a very small group. So Liam, my husband, obviously, is a great counsel for me. I sought a close business friend, someone who does business consulting and advisory who I trust very much, a mentor who's grown large businesses before, who's about 15 or 20 years ahead of me in their career. And then a friend who knows the Pilates industry as well. And instead of sort of saying, what do you think I should do? I asked things like, what do you see that I might not be seeing? Are there any parts of what I'm telling you where you think I've missed something or I haven't considered another option? What blind spots do I need to be aware of? What questions do you have for me to really help me consider if this is the right decision, if that makes sense? Because the best thing about trusted advisors is actually none of them made the decision for me. Not a single person said, I think you should do X. They all asked me questions that meant that I was able to answer and make my own decision off those questions because they reflected things back to me. They challenged my logic, they questioned fears and assumptions and things that were underlying the decision, but they didn't override my instinct or my alignment or tell me what to do. And I think that's really, really powerful and important. A great group of advisors will never tell you what to do. They'll ask you the right questions to help you make sure that you feel like you've considered everything in making your decision. So I would say in that process, be really discerning about who you consult with your decision because you don't want to consult people who need you to stay the same because it will be self-serving and in their best interest to tell you not to make a certain decision, but also not people who benefit you from evolving or making the other decision. You don't want people who project their own fears or risks onto you as well. So, people who might make a different decision because of their own personal circumstance or have different risk tolerances as well. What's really important is you get people who ask you the right questions that help you reflect really meaningfully on your decision. People who understand your values, who respect your ambition, who aren't threatened by growth, and who care more about what's best for you than anyone else's comfort. The external perspective can really help you sharpen your thinking, but I think what's most important is that final decision must always be yours when you're looking to make a big career or business decision. The next one, preserve what matters. So what part of the decision that you're thinking of letting go of matters most to you and how do you preserve that? So I'll give you an example when it's in relation to the studio. So for me, the hardest part is actually saying goodbye to the community because I adore the community within the Pilates studio, and building a strong community was really one of the most important things to me when I started the studio. So instead of thinking I was losing that community, I thought to myself, how can I redesign the way community looks without having the studio? So some of the things I wrote down were free community events, maybe occasional pop-up classes in a local space, creating a WhatsApp group. I always laugh that in Pilates, you're not just getting Pilates, you're getting number one, great playlists, so I can share the playlists, but also we share amazing recommendations of businesses we love in Pilates. It might be a great osteopath or acupuncturist or a great restaurant that we've just tried. Loads of different things we are sharing, and I get some of the best recommendations, and so do the clients. And so I thought about, how do I continue that? And maybe that's with a WhatsApp group to continue that community feel. And so I think it's about thinking you don't have to burn everything down. Not everything has to go when you make a career decision. It's about reframing and thinking, how can I transform this in the way that it works to maintain the parts of it that are really important to me, even though I'm making the difficult decision to close it. The next one is a framework that Jeff Bezos shares. Love him or hate him, it's not about him. It's a great framework. And he used this when he decided to leave Wall Street and start Amazon. And he asked himself, when I'm 80, which decision will I regret more? So it's a regret minimization framework. And he asked, will I regret staying safe or trying? And for me at 80, I know I won't regret closing the studio. I can always open the studio again. I can always open up another studio or teach Pilates again. But I would regret not throwing everything at Mind Your Grit to scale work that I know could impact tens of thousands of people. And long-term regret is a really, really powerful compass. Finally, nervous system check. And I think sometimes this is the most overlooked and underrated piece. Thinking about when you imagine staying as you are, how does your nervous system feel when you think about that? Is it feeling tight, anxious, overwhelmed, stressed, defeated? And then think about when you make the other decision, the decision you're looking to go towards, how do you feel? Does your body feel open, excited, expansive? Do you feel like you can breathe easy? Now, I do want to say it's okay to feel a bit of fear because it's uncertain. When you make a decision, there is no guarantee, there is no certainty. And I think that's what's really important. When people want to make a big decision, they look for certainty. There is no such thing as certainty, right? When you make a decision about a business or career. What you can do, though, is create clarity through the frameworks that I've just shared. And that's the difference. We can create clarity, but we can't create certainty. So our nervous system often knows before our mind does what decision we want to make. We just have to pause enough and search for the signals. But don't let uncertainty or a little bit of fear or discomfort make you think that it's a bad decision, because it's very normal to feel that when you're making a decision that is unknown. So I'm going to give you a little recap of those frameworks. Maybe you might want to re-listen to this and write some of them down if you're needing to make a big decision. So here's the checklist. The first one is fact or feeling. Separate a piece of paper. What are the facts? What are your feelings? Compare the decisions against your rich life and which decision better allows you to live your rich life. Come back to your mission and your purpose. What is most going to help you with that? Conduct an energy audit. What of each of the decisions do you think will give you the most energy, or what do you think will drain your energy? Use the 10-10-10 rule. How will I feel in 10 minutes, 10 months, or 10 years? Assess the opportunity cost of staying. Too often we think about the risk of changing or making the decision, but what about the risk of staying the same? Consult your trusted advisors, making sure that they're not telling you what decision to make, but that they're asking you the right questions to make you consider all of the things at play. Redesign what you're afraid to lose. So if there is a part of your current circumstance that you absolutely love and you don't want to lose it, think about how you can carry that forward. Like the community aspect of Pilates for me. How do I carry that community element forward without keeping the studio open? Use regret minimization. So thinking about yourself at 80 and what part will you regret more? What decision would you regret more at 80? And then finally, a nervous system check-in. Sit with yourself, sit in silence, sit in nature, ask yourself, imagine yourself in both of the circumstances, staying where you are or going ahead and making the decision and seeing what your body feels. Big decisions are tough. They're not easy to make, and they're not just about being courageous. They're often about figuring out what is in most alignment for you as a person. Not what the Instagram business coach tells you, not what society says is the best thing to do, and sometimes not even what the financials on paper say either. Because if you looked at my businesses on paper, you would say Pilates is a really strong business and it's silly to close it. But there are many other things that are playing into this decision as a factor. And so I would say alignment is almost always about letting go of something good to create space for something better. And every time you say a yes to something, you're saying no to something else, because really life is all about trade-offs. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of insight into how I make big career and business decisions. These frameworks all allow you to really tap into your gut and your intuition as well. And sometimes people can say that's a little bit woo-woo, but in doing these frameworks, just notice what comes up for you in a feeling sense. Because when you notice how you're feeling when you write certain things down or when you go through these frameworks, it allows you to feel into your body around, what do I actually want? And it gets you out of your head a little bit, because even in doing these frameworks, sometimes we can write down what we think is right. So I encourage you to be really honest with yourself. And these are a really, really solid help in strategically making great decisions, but also tapping into what's important for alignment for ourselves, for our purpose, and tapping into that intuition. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for joining me on Work and Wellness. If today's episode resonated with you, remember, someone in your network might need to hear this too. Share it with a colleague or friend who could use these insights. I'd love to keep the conversation going, so find us on Instagram at Mind Your Grit, where we share daily tips and continue these discussions. And if you found value in today's episode, please take time to rate and review the show. It makes such a huge difference and helps other people discover conversations they might really need. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Each week, we're building a community of people who believe that success and well-being go hand in hand. You can find the notes, resources, and links from today's episode at mindyourgrit.com. This is Work and Wellness with Ange Davis. Your work matters, your wellness matters, and this is where it all comes together. See you next week.